Come on.
Okay, we're live now.
Okay, perfect. We are back, Senate Gov Ops, on Friday, February 2nd. Here is the copy of the bill for y'all. We're gonna have, I'm gonna keep going with that. We have Tucker Anderson, here to take us through the newest draft, which has the changes we discussed over the last two times we went with this, talked about this bill. So just gonna turn it over to you, Tucker.
We get a copy or?
Here,
sorry, did I
I'm
not
sorry, Senator,
Oh, sorry.
Here.
There you go. There's one more. Anybody need it?
You got yours? Okay. We have an extra one if you, anybody in the room, Kara, do you want it, or?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Wait, so we have, actually, I'm gonna stop and talk we have a witness joining via Zoom. And Mr. LaFleur, do you have a time crunch? Would you like to go first with your testimony, before we walk through the bill? Okay. Awesome. Have you been able to see the new version of the bill online?
Not yet. I have not. Can you hear me? First of all, can you hear me due to internet,
Yes.
Connectivity?
We can
And
hear.
second of all, I have not seen a new bill. You know how internet is around the state of Vermont. It's you get, like I said, most rural communities, as we know, can't access that information. That's the reason why I'm here.
Okay.
Like I said, how much time do I have? And like I said, and I could start whenever.
Okay, how about, we have about 10 minutes for you, does that sound good? Till about
Yes, I can. Like I said, I sent you guys script ahead of time, so you should have that in your hands.
Oh, perfect, okay, well, it's probably posted on our website then. Thank you.
Yes, it was.
We can take a look at that, and then why don't you tell us what you would like us to know? Thank you, Tucker.
Okay, let me. I can get going in here. Greetings, everyone, on Senate GovOp committee members. My name is Matthew.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna ask you to give us your name, but go ahead. You were gonna do that.
Yeah, I was going to do that anyway. I do it all the time. My name is Matthew Lawrence LaFleur from Alburgh, Vermont, and Grand Isle County of Vermont, and I support S55 as a solution for a permanent hybrid virtual options opportunity for town municipalities across Vermont statewide. I'm a member of the Vermont Disability Democratic Caucus, which does exist in the Democratic Party, and which is VDDC, and a member of the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns Equity Committee member with Ted Brady, VLCT, and an important member of the Vermont Healthcare Advisory Team member statewide of Vermont. Sorry to tell you this about how many organizations I have joined, and this is just a little on the list, and have not yet fully disclosed every single organization within Vermont statewide. But the reason why I support S55 is for equity, diversity, inclusion, acceptance, and transparency, and a sense of belonging. For individuals that are like myself, of color, communities of color, low-income families, veterans, senior citizens, individuals with disabilities, we deserve much better and have a right to participate under the American with Disability Act, the ADA, federal law of the land. I hope you also considered Ted Brady from VLCT, that is proposal to also make finance mechanism to support towns and cities without virtual technology options and have opportunity to provide them those technology options to support them and their technology upgrades so they can participate within Vermont statewide to tell them days, government operation, etc. Everyone has a right to participate in his or her way of looking at the big picture. As we as individuals need to collaborate together as a whole so all can survive in Vermont's rural climate. There's a saying, nothing about us without us. From the veterans, senior citizens, and individuals with disability movement across Vermont statewide. As to closing my testimony, as we work and collaborate together, we bring efficiency and effectiveness, positive economics for everyone in Vermont, regardless. It's a win-win scenario. Outlook for everyone to participate. Let's collaborate and do this work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lafleur. It's really, really great to hear from you. And I was remiss in not having us introduce ourselves to you because you have not testified in our committee before. So we'll introduce ourselves to you because one of your senators is on our committee, actually. So I'm Senator Ruth Hardy. I represent the Addison District.
Olivia Farber, Committee Assistant. Senator Tanya Vygotsky, Chittenden Central.
And hi, Matthew. We've met before. Nice to see you. Senator Rebecca White from the Windsor County District.
Hi, Matthew. Senator Bob Norris, Franklin County, to include the town of Alberg in Grand Isle.
And Watson, Washington District.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor County District.
And thank you so much, Matthew, for your testimony. And we are working hard to make sure that we create a balance in our open meeting law and make sure that our meetings are accessible to everyone around the state. So we appreciate hearing from you, and Olivia can send you the most recent copy of the bill if you haven't seen it already, so you can take a look at it, okay?
Yes, thank you, Ruth, for bringing that up. And thank you, everyone. It's just, with equity at stake in Vermont, it's just, inequality. Is where do we want to go from here? What do we want to do more to our communities? I'm doing a lot as is in these organizations. I'm trying to bring, the sense of, of why we do this work across Vermont statewide. But thank you very much for hearing my testimony. And yeah, just send me the updated version of what you have. And I look forward to having this conversation in the near future, because I do think, with accessibility and accommodations, but also it's, how we survive in Vermont.
Oh,
And
okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you for your service and all the committees you serve on.
Yeah, absolutely. You're clearly doing a lot. You're carrying your load for sure. Thank you, Matthew, and have a great weekend.
I love this background.
All right, we're gonna move on to Tucker to walk us through the most recent version of draft.
Good afternoon, Dr. Anderson, Legislative Council. You have in front of you version 2.1 of the committee's amendment to S55. I have highlighted all of the language that has changed since the last version that you saw. So we're going to pick up in section 2 on page 4. And the subdivision of the new requirements for open and hybrid meetings, specifically for the posting and retention of video recordings. The new language states that for a minimum of 30 days following the approval and posting of the official minutes for an electronic or hybrid meeting, the public body shall retain the audio-visual recording of the meeting and shall post the recording in a designated electronic location. So this accomplishes two of the requests about this item. The first is 30-day retention period following the posting of the official minutes, and that the link to the recording is available for that 30-day period.
Okay. That's good. So people can read the minutes and they can watch the video and they can compare.
And they can download the video.
And they can
so
download the
keep it.
video if they want to keep it. So perfect. And 30 days is not an excessive length of time, hopefully. Awesome. Carry on.
The next amendment is in section 3. And as a reminder, this is in relation to the local incident authority. Two new definitions are added. If you look at page 5, it's in subdivisions 2 and 3. The first request was to clarify or define what directly impedes means. So based on some dictionary definitions and some of the context in the bill, I tried to give you a starting point here. So directly impedes means interferes or obstructs in a manner that makes it, and I have some options for you.
Oh, right.
Impractical, infeasible, or impossible for a public body to meet either a designated physical location or through electronic means.
Impractical, I thought.
Sounds like too low a bar.
Impossible means.
No, impossible's too high a bar.
I was gonna say infeasible, so
That's what I was gonna choose
we
too.
will continue to think about this.
The
We
Goldilocks.
don't have to decide. But thank you for giving us options, and they all begin with I, just
This
like
is the-
impede. Okay.
Sure, I'm glad that I didn't write impossible. That
Impossible.
I wish you had.
in subdivision 3, and this is going to relate to the highest ranking elected or appointed officer. We have a definition for governmental unit. And I will give you some background here. I didn't know whether the intent of the committee was to have the highest ranking appointed or elected official of the public body. Or of, for example, the municipality, which is what you all had discussed. You referred to town managers, for example, or the chairs of select boards, but of course, there are all sorts of public bodies that exist within even just that municipal government space. So units of government, you've got state, county, or regional agency or municipality within which the public body has been established. And then there's a set aside here for the independent boards or commissions that they'll be considered their own unit of government.
So that, give us an example, what an independent board or commission
The
is.
Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Okay. You were quick on that draw.
I thought of a couple of them
Yeah.
writing this, that they're not necessarily embedded within a particular agency.
Okay,
So
so what about the Human Services Board? Would that be the Secretary of AHS would be the highest ranking appointed? And the chair would be, where, you know, that's what we have to figure out.
I would have to take a look at the organizational chart, but if that is a board that is embedded within the Agency of Human Services, then it would be the secretary of the agency.
It seems like,
That might be excessive.
I think that's way excessive.
Yeah, so, okay, but let's keep going on this and then we can ponder that as we.
But just on that, it would be helpful if whoever was the highest ranking of whatever was sort of in or around the local incident, because otherwise they may not even appreciate it. I mean, if they're on vacation in the Bahamas, they're not gonna necessarily appreciate the local incident that's going on. If we make it the highest, anyway. Just thinking about the
Yeah.
secretary.
Yeah, we'll try to, we'll make it
Work.
public.
We'll make it work.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So moving on to page 6. In subsection C. This is the requirement for the finding by that. Excuse me, yeah. Yes, so by that highest ranking officer. Before a public body may meet under the authority provided in this section for meetings held during a local incident, the highest ranking elected or appointed officer of the governmental unit shall make a formal finding and announcement of the local incident, including the basis.
Okay. Let's continue to think about this. I don't think we need to make this decision now, because we're not gonna, Tucker's not gonna go draft a new version right now. We're gonna take some more testimony, so. This,
Okay, that seems like denser than it needs to be, but anyway.
yeah,
It still gives me indigestion that it's even an elected official, so.
Ooh.
Senator Watson.
I have more thoughts on this, but I don't wanna hold stuff, if there's more parts that are gonna apply to this, or is this the only change? Are we done with the local incident?
No, that's part of the local.
That is the end of the finding of the local incident. Later on, there will cover in the next instance of amendment, the announcement.
Great, that was.
That's in 4, top of page 7.
That is correct. So in addition to the existing requirements for emergency meetings, you have this language in subdivision 4 that requires that the public body announce and post a notice that the meeting will not be held in a hybrid fashion and will be held either in a designated physical meeting location or through electronic means. There is a definition for publicly announced within the open meeting law that requires the public body to provide an announcement to the director of the newspapers of circulation that the public agency, in the area the public agency serves, and the editor, and I can't remember the term for the leader of a radio station or television station or service.
Manager,
So essentially announce to all of those media entities and their directors that this meeting is going to happen either solely physically or electronically. And it's the same standard that applies under the open meeting law for special meetings. I did have a note from the discussion that there was some desire to pair this with emergency meetings. The emergency meeting language does not require public announcement. It just requires that they provide some sort of warning and that the meeting be very limited if an emergency
Oh.
meeting is going to happen. So I've been tempted to pair this with that intermediary step of the special meeting
Right,
where there's a public announcement.
right. We wouldn't want to limit what this meeting, because it
Yeah.
could be just a regular meeting, but it would have to, yeah. Sorry, what?
Thank you. So with an emergency meeting, there's no time frame requirement on how far in advance it must be notified because it's emergency.
The precipitating event for an emergency meeting is that it's happening so fast that it's within a 24-hour period, that the need for the meeting arises and the meeting is held within, say, 24-hour period. Otherwise, you have a special meeting.
Right.
And
Yes.
because of that, there's no doesn't have the same requirements as a regular special meeting for posting, providing notice, or in the case of special meetings, publicly announcing. It's just that you have some sort of announcement or warning, if feasible. You hold the meeting, but the meeting is limited to very specific bases that you have included in the announcement of the emergency meeting.
And so I just had a flag here for the timing of this announcement, but it seems that if you are going to be making a change like this, it's sort of akin to the emergency meeting in that you might not know until the day of.
no,
And so it makes sense to not have a timing requirement similarly. Right, okay. Just wanted to say that out loud on the record that this,
Yeah, because so for example, the school board meeting could be warned and everybody thinks it's gonna be hybrid, it's gonna be a normal meeting, and then there's an ice storm.
Yeah.
And they still wanna meet. But they don't have internet, so they're gonna just meet in public. Or there's an ice storm and they can't get to the school
Yeah.
building and they just wanna meet online, remotely, either one. They can still make that announcement, we're only gonna meet one way or the other. They just have to announce it, but there's not a time requirement for it.
they have to announce it and give a reason.
And give a reason and say because of ice or because of lack of power. Yeah, okay,
Yes, explain the basis for the incident and the reason that it can't be held in one.
okay. But they could do that within 5 hours of the meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's we're trying to make for government flexible.
Yeah.
And
I'm
respond
just
to
making sure that's how
reality.
it's drafted, Senator.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So as a part of that, it seems to me that, like, we want to avoid the situation, if at all possible, where you show up and you didn't know that it was, gonna be remote, or perhaps like if, I guess what I'm saying is like, because right now it says public announce and post a notice. So that indicates that it can just be one notice in one place. And I don't know how I feel about this, but it seems to me that it would be better if it was posted in all of the places that were normally posting it.
You might not be able to.
That's true.
Yeah, and I think if you're in a local incident, people are gonna probably check, like when we have a terrible snowstorm.
Yeah.
People, we call in and see, is the state house open, is the law school open, is, and I think. I think if you have it in a key important spot that's accessible during a local incident,
Yeah.
people will check that. I think that's, and I
Well, I think there are some kinds of local incidents that might happen that are for public safety reasons that people wouldn't
Yes.
necessarily know about. Like,
Yes,
they could
that's
show
true.
up to the town hall or the school and realize, oh, I thought there was a meeting tonight and it's now all on Zoom, but I also think we're not gonna be able to think through every single
Okay,
scenario.
Yeah, that's fair.
And make it perfect, but
And then put it on the website that
But
it's remote.
I'm
what,
okay with this. as
you're
it
okay
is.
with it?
Yeah, it's a situation that I thought. I was just anticipating could arise and like, how do we minimize the confusion for the
Yeah,
public and,
yeah.
anyway.
Well, we're gonna get more testimony, so we can hear from other people, what their thoughts are on it. Okay, carry on, Tucker.
There we are. That's
Carry on.
Yeah, say it, Tucker.
Section 4, still on page 7. This is an explanation of the purpose and intent for hybrid meetings.
And before you read it out loud, I'm gonna stop you because, Senator Clarkson and I were working on it. She had something that's shorter than I did. So this needs
How
more.
surprising.
And so this will still,
Thought it.
this still needs some work for the committee, but I didn't wanna try to edit it all at the group.
And I didn't have done it.
Why don't we all think about it after Tucker reads it and we'll mull before we finish.
Yeah, so.
But go ahead, Tucker.
Okay, so there's the expression of intent. It's the intent of the General Assembly that meetings of public bodies be fully accessible to members of the public who would like to attend and participate. Additionally, that meetings of public bodies be accessible to the members of those public bodies. Accordingly, so we have the statement of purpose here. The facilitation of hybrid meetings run based on best practices established by the Secretary of State and for which members of the public body and the public regularly attend through a combination of in-person and remote participation should be the standard. Hybrid meetings should be the standard, is the finding there. The General Assembly recognizes that fully remote, fully in-person meetings may be more feasible for the effective work of advisory public bodies. And in certain circumstances with hybrid meetings are not possible due to unforeseen circumstances, but in all cases, accessibility and safety for members of the public and members of the public body should be paramount. So there are instances where it's more feasible under these terms to hold either one or the other. But on balance, the accessibility and safety for the public and the members of the public body takes paramount control and consideration.
And Ruth,
I use this hybrid.
So initial reactions, I mean, we're gonna mull it, perfect it, but I was trying to get what I thought I heard from the committee as we want the hybrid meetings to be based on best practices too, because that sort of got to my concern about a lot of hybrid meetings are just one person sitting in a room running them, and that may be not fully hybrid, but then Senator Watson.
One of the, don't have strong feelings about this, but one of the other notes that I had about the intent section was about the purpose of recordings. I don't know if we wanted to say anything about that. That would be in a different section because it's earlier than this, but
I think it's actually covered in a way. Because that's accessibility, recordings equate to accessibility.
it'd be
I
worth.
mean, being able to review it. or see it.
What do you think? Do you think it's necessary to have intent about the recordings? I mean, I get that it's a policy decision. Yes, I answered that question for you.
I mean,
I don't.
Senator Biehoski.
I don't know that we're in agreement on this committee as to what the purpose of the recording
Yeah,
is.
fair.
I don't actually think it is only about accessibility. I also think it's about transparency and accountability.
That's to me all important.
But are we, I mean, I have thoughts, but
I'm shocked.
I know, it's really a character for me, isn't it?
Totally is.
So I like the intent language. I have thought we were going to define what we meant by hybrid meeting, but are we choosing to kind of punch that to the Secretary of State's best practices instead?
That's what I thought, because I tried to, I caught myself up in tangles trying to define what it was, and I was like, I'm not sure that we could collectively define it, so I think, I punted it to best practices, because I figured that's part of what we're asking the Secretary of State's office to do, in combination with the LCT and others, is come up with what is a good hybrid meeting.
Okay, we might someday have to revisit that, but at this point, and I don't mean like someday before we look this out, I mean like we might have to.
In future years,
future
yeah,
years, but I
and we
think
can ask them about it too. Every time we mention somebody, I try to get them in here to be like, are you okay with this?
Mhm.
So, but we also, to your point, Senator, we could embed in this intent. I don't think I used the word transparency anywhere, so we could put that in with accessibility as part of the intent. And that might get to what you're talking about as well with the recordings. So, okay, but for now, well, let's let this just simmer. Okay. Next section.
All right, in section 5, there was language around electronic voting at annual meetings of municipalities. That language has been removed, but one of my notes was to preserve the hybrid meeting aspect for any informational hearings that are held in the days preceding the annual meeting.
Mhm.
So meetings where voting is happening. So that's that highlighted change we see in subdivision B2 in section 5. But section 6, I already have a few technical corrections that I left out of this. So I'll highlight them as we go along. The first is that the title of section 6 is going to change. This is no longer specifically about electronic voting.
Thank you, I was gonna mention that to you, I'm glad you got it.
I've already got it in version 2.2.
Perfect.
So the report, all of the specific provisions about electronic voting have been removed. Now it's a bit shorter and might need some more input from the committee on what's going to go in there. But the report will come back as just a report concerning remote voter participation in annual municipal meetings. So not specific to electronic voting or electronic voting platforms, but more broadly, remote participation of the voters in the meeting.
Yeah, and the reason, originally Tucker had it drafted as a report back on electronic voting, and I said, the report back could be. It could make a recommendation about electronic voting, it could make a recommendation about proxy voting, it could make a recommendation about other accommodations that should be made, it could be about Australian balloting, there could be a lot of different ways to tackle the same problem, and so I thought it might be better to leave it broader, so it gives the Secretary of State more options to consider. But the point being is, how do we enable people to vote at that meeting who can't be there in person? So that's why it was narrowed, but it probably does need a little more meat on the bones. Senator Yoski.
Yes, I appreciate that, and I wonder actually if what we're really asking is about voter accessibility at annual municipal meetings, and if it's even possibly a little bit broader than simply remote participation. Or maybe we're saying kind of the same thing, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'll write that down. I think that we can have this sort of conversation with the Secretary of State's office, and they can help us with the language of what we're asking them to come back to us with. But I agree, it's accessibility and I wonder, in compliance, I think maybe this needs to be said, but it might be helpful to say it, in compliance with ADA accommodations.
From at least what I heard from Tucker, and Tucker, do correct me if I'm wrong, last time, we are in compliance with presently because it has to be held in a public place where people,
Right.
that is accessible. And so this is sort of going beyond, due to technology changes, what's required under the ADA.
In theory, these should be held in locations that comply with Title IX public accommodation standards and the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's the way that I want to frame this, is that those laws
Theoretically are being followed.
theoretically are being followed and exist. So restating that they exist would be redundant.
Right, I understand that restating,
Except
but
for-
maybe when we're asking them to report back, that we want them to consider that as something that they address in the report back.
Mhm.
But Senator Clarkson.
Yes, I don't think you can ask too much of the quality of hybrid annual meetings until they have the equipment, because we have a fabulous model for a hybrid meeting. We have seamlessly moved to hybrid meetings. But we have very good equipment. So I mean, I think some of what we're talking about here with the annual meetings, in terms of how, you know, I think it will depend on the equipment that the town is able to get, which depends on what we can appropriate.
Well, sure, but I think what the conversation is really about in a town meeting, an annual meeting, because they're more than just town
Right.
annual meetings. For people who are participating remotely, especially for people who need to participate remotely. If they have a floor vote on the,
At an informational meeting,
no, this is at the actual
oh, the
annual
actual, I thought
meeting.
we were,
Well, this is the report, this is the report, so how do we help accommodate voters who can't attend in person?
who have to,
But we want them to be able to vote, and that becomes complicated because it brings up, you know, questions about electronic voting or proxy voting or other accommodations, and we don't want to answer that right now in the draft.
We don't.
Want to hear recommendations from the Secretary of State's
but we have
office.
best practices about voting. In meetings, for example, often in a meeting, we'll be in a meeting, people have to vote on something in the meeting.
That's just-
quickly to advance an idea or a discussion point, and we all take 5 seconds to quickly vote, it's tallied, it's totally.
It's a different kind of voting, that's the
No, I
voting of
realize
the
that,
public
but we know
body,
you're
this is
doing-
the voting of the public,
I.
So, yeah.
But-
Senator Bihowski.
And I'm happy to come back to this at a later point. I'm not, yes. Hold on, let me
Wait,
get my
that's
thoughts
not
over. Yes, I agree that we want to be thinking about voter accessibility in terms of the ADA. And what I don't want to create, if we like link it to only that and the idea of someone has to request this accommodation because of certain reasons, is that we start to limit or put people in positions where they're having to disclose their health
Mhm.
information at the meeting of the
Yeah,
public
But it may
body.
just be children, I mean, it
And
may just be
yeah,
reason.
And I don't know if we should only limit it to people who are not able to be there for disability purposes, so that's.
Yeah.
Okay,
It should be.
so
for all
we're gonna let this, I hear you, yes, absolutely, great.
It's an
We're gonna let
option.
this simmer, and we're also gonna get testimony from the Secretary of State and others. And remember, this is just a report, so. Okay,
It's a report.
carry on, section 7.
Robust options.
In section 7, this relates to the published best practices and guidelines from the Secretary of State. The committee had asked for some other organization to be included in the in consultation list. So added here is the AGO, the Vermont Access Network, and then you had asked for some input from an agency or a party that represents,
Yeah,
for example, language access, access for individuals with disabilities. I didn't know what to put in there, so as an option, I added the Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living, but drafting error, I didn't write it correctly, so. But it's there.
yeah, you did.
I did not have
Ah.
disabilities.
Yes, you did. Aging and independent.
I had in my mind the nickname Dale and wrote
Department,
Department of Aging and Independent Living.
got it.
Well, that is, you're right,
So-
it works.
Would probably Disability Rights Council is
Okay.
is probably the right one. But that doesn't get to, yeah. But for now, let's just put that, but we'll,
But why was, can somebody remind me why we think the AGO, why the AG's office is.
they are the
enforcement?
enforcement
Oh, that's right.
mechanism for the open meeting law.
Yeah.
And they sent, by the way, since you mentioned that, they sent additional testimony, which Olivia has posted. They get 6 to 7, I believe, open meeting law complaint annually about.
Right.
And that they actually deal with, and they have a form, and so you can see the email that Leslie sent in after her testimony, and then the form that people fill out, so that's on our website if you're interested. That's why they're on the list. Consulting, okay, next,
In section 9, which goes from the bottom of page 9 into page 10, is the delay for compliance requirements for municipalities. And this states that notwithstanding the provisions of section 2, which are the hybrid meeting requirements, the public bodies of a municipality shall not be required to hold hybrid meetings or meet the 30-day retention and posting requirement for audiovisual recordings until January 1st, 2026. Overall, the bill in its entirety is taking effect January 1st, 2025. So this was structured based on the request of the committee first, that this not go into play until January 1st, 2025. And that the municipal public bodies be given at least a year, is what I had in my notes, to come into compliance with the new requirements.
Okay, the one thing is you're gonna have to put the section on the Secretary of State's report an earlier effective date, because they have to report back to us on January 5th, 25. Senator Bielanski, you look confused.
I thought that the law that is expiring, that we were trying to fix expires in
It does.
July.
Oh,
So
good.
I actually thought the dates we agreed on were July 1, 2025 and July 1, 2026.
So we'd have to extend the current open meeting law provisions till then. So the problem is they expire in June of
We're not gonna
2024.
extend them again, you guys, we're not.
No, I'm just saying, the problem is what I was,
That's actually what I meant, July 1 of 2024
Right.
and July 1 of July 1 of 2025. I thought that it was July and July that we had agreed on.
Yeah,
I would agree, and if we extend it for full compliance until 26, that's great, but it has to go into law July 1st.
Yeah.
I prefer not to extend it.
And I think with this modest amount of money in here to pay for equipment for 252, well, there are lots of municipalities, but 252 towns. And lots of other public bodies. This is not very much money. If we begin to stagger it, beginning with July of 24.
okay,
I think people people already know that they need equipment because they're already doing this.
so a
So we're being
couple
helpful.
things, well, Tucker, you look like you were gonna say something.
So I was going to ask if the committee would prefer that the authority built in to hold electronic meetings take effect July 1st, 2024, and then have provisions built in, because one of the requests was that state government as well should be given some sort of lead time to prepare for the hybrid requirement. You could delay the enactment of some of those provisions around the hybrid meetings until July 1st or January 1st of 2025. And still have this session law provision exempting the municipalities until January 1st, 2026.
I think we want this to go into effect for state government on July 1st,
Okay.
because I think they're ready. I mean, we didn't hear anybody who said they weren't ready at state government. It's just, I think that local government, and I think a lot of local governments are already ready, a lot of them are. So
So there could be voluntary.
Senator Bielanski,
So, yes, July 1, 2024. But my preference still is that the implementation or the requirement kicks in July 1, 2025. That's what I thought we'd agreed to. I mean, that's 18 months from now.
right, but
It'll only be a
our
year.
session law
Yeah.
expires on this July 1st.
Right,
So
so-
we need something in that year.
Yes, so what I'm suggesting is that we change the effective date here to July 1st, 2024. And that we change the notwithstanding date here to July 1st, 2025, instead of being January 1, 25 and January 1, 26. It's July 24 and July 25, so there's still that year in between. But we're capturing the fact that what we have in place now is gonna disappear at the end of.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I mean, in terms of the notwithstanding stuff and so what would be in effect from July 1st, 24 to July 1st, 25 under what?
Yeah, I'm not
Bielanski
sure
just
I
said?
understand.
Under this, all of the hybrid meeting requirements would go into place for any public body that isn't a municipal public body.
Okay,
And then July 1st, 2025, everyone would be
Okay,
under the new hybrid meeting.
all right, let's think about that. And one thing, just, I think I maybe I already told you this, but JFO is working on trying to get a better estimate for us for the grant program. And just a heads up, Ted, I suggested they reach out to you and so
Yeah.
they'll.
So
Scott
we need a
Moore
better
is the JFO person who's working on it, so you might be hearing from him. Yeah,
But
Um,
it just on that, it matters to me that the towns who know that they have needs financially could start applying for this as of July 1st, 2024. So that we can start booting them up because it's not, given this year, it's not gonna be that much money. So we wanna have them start
Right.
applying for it and getting it, and then have more be able to apply for it next year.
right. And I don't think that in the grant program, no matter what it is, it's not intended to pay for every single thing. Like towns are probably gonna still have to and already
We could
have.
have a
like,
match. We could design it as a match.
Senator Watson.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my concern is that I don't know. I mean, one possibility is that that if we pass this before the end of session, that, you know, the Secretary of State's office could set up the grant, have it ready for applications on July 1st, 2024, but my worry is that it's gonna take some time, more time than that, to set up even the application process.
Mhm.
And even if it was available, I think it's gonna take some time for, I'm just thinking through the timeline here, right? Like, it's gonna take people, maybe like in municipalities, particularly small municipalities that have a lot of capacity, like it's gonna take some time to get this out the door, right? To actually apply, and then for that grant to be awarded. So I'm imagining that whole time as taking a year, and then it may take them time to order it and set it up and be practiced enough so that they are in compliance. So I would be more comfortable 2026 just to let their
January of 26.
Okay,
January.
So it's ready for.
so why don't we, wait, do you wanna say one more?
Not
thing?
about this.
Okay, so
Something else.
here's what I'm thinking about the effective dates for now. Let's mull this more and think through the timeline. We're also gonna get more testimony from the Secretary of State's office, because they're also gonna be required to work with others on the best practices. And the training and all that, and the grant, and you're right, they're not gonna be able to send out money.
Yeah, but
on
by
July
October,
2nd.
they could probably have,
Um,
we'll find out.
we'll see, it's an election year, so the Secretary of State's office is a little busy, so we'll hear directly from them about what they think. And we'll get some more in testimony, I'm sure VLCT and VSBA and others have thoughts and feelings about this. So let's not, we don't need to make a decision now, is my point, but I hear you, you're right, there's a lot of other factors that need to go into the thinking. All right, so let's put a pin on the dates.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a challenge because all
Yes.
of those remote options
Yeah.
disappear. So I think
Senator
we need to do-
Nikolsky.
Yeah, so one of the things we discussed that I don't see in the bill is a training requirement for non-advisory, for the chairs of non-advisory
Oh, right.
committees. The other thing that came up during the conversation, that might help to get at the fact that people don't know what to do if they think the law is already broken, is a requirement that the complaint form be posted on the town website. So that if people are like, open meeting law is being broken, they have, so, for example, I'm a social worker, every person I work with, I have to say, like, these are the laws I have to follow, and if you don't think I am, this is who you talk to. It's kind of the same idea of like the town or not, the public body saying, these are the laws I have to follow, and if you don't think I am, this is how you say something.
Okay. Okay. Ted, can you remind me, you were doing a survey of some kind, right? Can you remind me on what the timeline on that is?
We think we'll have it right after town meeting day.
Okay, so it will benefit our friends over in the other body. Okay. No, that's the way it is, that's fine. Okay. I think for now, we're gonna put this away. Thank you, Tucker, for those changes. We're making progress. It's complicated and we wanna make sure it makes sense. We're gonna take testimony again next Wednesday on the bill. And have a number of people already lined up for that. So, and it will be posted as possible markup and vote. My guess is we're not gonna be ready for that, but don't get freaked out if you say that, that's just, or you see that, it's just in case we are ready, wanna give us the option. So Senator, Clarkson.
Allison, I would just like to say, we need a robust interim measure. Because we cannot, we need to either have a better off-ramp or a limited beginning. Or a beginning for towns that are capable of doing this. But we need to be ready July 1st for towns that have been functioning for the last 3.5 years. With the ability to be entirely remote. So
Yes, yes.
I just think we need to be thinking about a robust off-ramp and or just continuance. In some cases, people will be ready to do this right away. So I don't think it's such a big deal for many of our towns, because we've been doing it already.
Okay,
So anyway, that's all my thought for as we think about this for next week.
all right, sounds good. So we're gonna, thank you, Tucker, appreciate it. Have a great
Thank you
weekend.
all.
Yeah. And now we're gonna move on to the county governance study. He's not here.
I just came out.
Annie maybe by Bob Flint is here. Bob Flint is the head of our Springfield Regional Development Board.
Oh,
Bob Flint.
Oh, it's divine.
right,
Yo, Flint. Good to see you.
right. Okay, thank you for reminding me.
In
Okay,
Springfield.
we are, sorry, we're gonna move on to S-159, the
County bill.
county study bill. Hi, Bob. Sorry, we're in our transition. Here we go.
Is flexible, I thought.
You are here. Why don't you introduce yourself? Well, no, we'll introduce ourselves because I don't think you know all of us yet. And then you can introduce yourself because you are a last minute addition. You're not actually even on our agenda, but wanted to make sure we heard from you. I'm Senator Ruth Hardy from the Addison District.
Olivia Parker, committee assistant. Tanya Hobsky, Chittenden Central District.
Hi, Bob. Rebecca White from White River Junction and your Windsor County District Senator.
The empty chair is Bob Norris, but he has
He's here.
departed for the day.
He has? His coach said.
Senator Ann Watson from the Washington District.
Oh, and me, Allison Clarkson, Windsor County District.
Okay, so Bob, we are looking at have you seen a copy of the bill S-159? And I know, if you want to introduce yourself, and I know your organization wanted a chance to explain who you are and how you're relevant to this bill, and then you had a specific change you wanted to see in it. So just take it away.
Great, thank you. And so I'm Bob Flint from Springfield Regional Development Corporation. We're the regional development corporation that, as Senators Clarkson and White know, covers southern Windsor County. And we are one of 12 RDCs, or regional development corporations, in Vermont. And apologies for not being up there in person. This kind of happened last minute, so I appreciate having a few moments of your time. The specific technical correction is on page 3 of what I'm looking at, and line 4. So the bill, and we are grateful that the bill has inclusion of RDCs as a part of the study committee. We would simply ask that that be appointed by ourselves, by the Regional Development Corporations of Vermont, rather than the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. So that's the specific change I'm testifying about.
Okay.
And let me do an elevator speech on what we do and why we care, or why we're interested in this bill and how it's relevant. So as I mentioned, there are 12 of us in the state. We're all nonprofit independent entities that have a contractual relationship with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. to basically be their boots on the ground. So each region has our regional planning commission or RPC, or one of us, a regional development corporation. In 2 regions in the state, they're one and the same, the Northeast Kingdom and Bennington. We get funding from other sources besides just what we receive from the state to perform that function. In the case of our organization, SRDC, Springfield Regional Development, we receive funding from 4 of our 6 municipalities, totaling roughly $85,000 a year. So what the heck do? We try to make things happen for a positive economic activity. So that includes on the business side, anything from helping businesses, one person or the largest, from workforce development to financing to facilitating incentives and everything in between. But that also means working with our towns on a variety of issues related to that, which in the case of our region includes a lot of old industrial sites that have hair and problems, brownfields in particular. Our organization happens to own hundreds of thousands of feet of contaminated properties that we're in the process of cleaning up in close partnership with the Mount Ascutney Regional Commission. And I guess that's the other point, is that the RDCs and the RPCs are like this. We work extremely closely together. An example of that actually was this summer. We're thankfully not to the degree it was in where you are in central Vermont, but our region did have an impact from the flooding in July, 3 of our area towns in particular. So the RPC and us have worked with our towns on the recovery of that, whether it's setting up recovery centers, facilitating access to some of the resources, facilitating stakeholder visits, or anything else. To now the conversation obviously shifting to mitigation and prevention for, heaven forbid, something else coming up next. We also are heavily involved in workforce development. As Senator Clarkson particularly knows, we tie very closely to technical education centers in our region. I happen to be the chair of ours. We're one of the independent CTEs in the state. And housing is increasingly coming up as something that we're starting to get involved with, in addition to our friends at the regional planning commissions. Today's Friday. On Monday night, I was in Chester meeting with a subcommittee of the town that's working on trying to identify opportunities for housing in the community of Chester. As the 2 senators also know, we've been heavily involved in Windsor in a project with Evernorth and the Windsor-Windham Housing Trust, facilitating what is called locally the Central and Main Project, which will be a 25-unit complex that will break ground this coming spring. And finally, kind of shifting back to workforce development, we're one of the regions that have partnership with the Federal Reserve of Boston on something called the Working Communities Challenge, which strives to help individuals, low and moderate income individuals, overcoming barriers to sustainable employment. So an example of how that ties to municipalities is one of our projects has been a microtransit effort. So again, in the town of Windsor, working with our public transit provider, the RPC, the town, and employers, we've established an Uber-like service. So someone between exits 8 and 9 on the interstate, which is basically Windsor just up to Heartland, instead of waiting for a bus to come at a specific time at a specific place, they can, there's my phone, take their app and contact a ride between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. and get anywhere within that proximity. So for example, we have an industrial park at exit 9 where Harpoon Brewery and several other businesses are located. An employee who works there now can get reliable transportation to tie into when their shifts are. That's something we're hoping to replicate in other communities around the region. And so a wonderful partnership between public and private. So that's a lot and a really high level overview, but just wanted to explain a little bit about who we were and appreciate the willingness to have us included in the committee on this bill.
Well, thank you, Bob. That's really helpful. When I was talking to Andrew earlier today, I heard P and he was like, "Oh no, D," and he was like, "I think we need to have Bob testify," because I mixed up the RPCs and the RDCs. But we do know what you do. I think we all know about our RDCs in our community, and really appreciate your really good work, and you're definitely relevant to this study, we're happy to make that change that you requested in the next draft of the bill. Is there anything else in terms of like what you think should be studied? that would be helpful to add, yeah, from your perspective on economic development?
I think a high level overview. I mean, I think as long as we're at the table, we can talk through whatever the issues are. And I
Yeah.
think I'm certainly familiar with our municipalities and how they work. So appreciate being part of the conversation.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for pinch hitting on a last second notice. I really appreciate it. Andrew, do you want to add anything?
No,
Or you-
all set.
you
Yeah.
good?
I think that's,
Okay.
Andrew was the placeholder.
Yes, because I was.
It was just
No problem, Selena.
the level of detail necessary with what kind of level do you want? So,
Yeah.
yeah, perfect. Thank you both. Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Tom.
Have a good
See
weekend.
you.
Take care. Thank you.
Good to see you, Bob. Talk to you soon. Oh, there's Annie.
Hi, Annie.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, for sure. You are our last witness of
I will- Good, good.
and we-
Hopefully it'll be a happy note.
Yeah, absolutely. And we appreciate you coming in to talk to us about S-159. And one of the main reasons that we want to hear from you is obviously, county government, law enforcement and judicial issues are important things that our current county government, I personally don't want this to just talk about those issues. I think there's a lot more that needs to be discussed and at the table, and really focused on the level of services, just more broadly, economic development, as we just heard. But obviously, public safety and those issues are important too. So we wanted your perspective from the state attorneys and sheriff.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Senators. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this on behalf of the department. I think the bill is good. I think it's a very good step forward to have a more collaborative conversation about county government and who does what and whatever. So I want to first say that I think it's a good bill. I support the bill. The department supports the bill. Obviously, you have members appointed from the sheriffs and from the state's attorneys both. That's great. We appreciate that. Of course, that's, there are 28 elected officials among, 14 state's attorneys, 14 sheriffs. Hopefully, hopefully they will be able to get input from their colleagues when these questions come up through the committee. So I think that that's wonderful. I know that central office staff will participate, at least come to some of the meetings as observers. And if there's things we can add, we would be happy to do that. In terms of the clarification of the role and oversight of those officials, as you know, the state's attorneys, the sheriffs are all constitutional officers. So, and of course, being attorneys, they also have obligations as to what they do and who can oversee them is, in terms of their role as an attorney is minimal from the perspective of performing their legal duties. But I still think it's worth a conversation.
Annie, hold on just 1 second.
Can I talk to you before you leave?
Mia. Oh, sure. Okay.
Before you leave.
Before I leave. Okay. Okay. So sorry, Annie. Somebody was at the door talking with us.
Yep.
Okay, Carrie.
Yep, no worries. So I think that's great. I actually, I think you'll remember in the S-17 report, I put in about 2 or 3 pages of what the duties assigned to a sheriff are. And I think that will be helpful. I also have a job description that I worked on a number of years ago about what is a state's attorney that I did with Lisa Warren when she was a state's attorney and she is now a judge. But we do have stuff that we'll be able to share with the committee because I think that this group, because I think it's important for them to see the full scope of the roles of state's attorneys and sheriffs. The other thing I wanted to mention is that much of what you have listed in here, which I think is an attempt to get everybody talking about cohesive and collaborative conversation about money and roles, is also some of what you had asked for in S-17. And I'll just point out that 3 areas. In S-17, you talked about, asked us to look at increasing efficiency in the delivery of public services. And I think that this fits in very nicely with that. Secondly, creation of sustainable funding model for the sheriff's departments. Again, this fits in nicely with what this bill is trying to do. And the third thing that it was something that we raised was the issue of unfunded expenses that the sheriffs sometimes have. Again, this fits in really well with the whole conversation of county government and the support from county government. So it's a very nice mesh between what we're working on in S17 and continuing to work on, and what this group might be able to bring to the table for some of those solutions. So I think it's a good blend between what
Excellent.
the bill you passed there. So I think that's pretty much it. I had just scribbled all over the bill, and those were my comments. We'd be happy to participate in any way that makes sense. And I'll stop there.
Excellent, Annie, thank you so much. That's really great to hear. That definitely was the intent, was that it be, you know, a good next step. And we do look forward to talking with you more in depth about the S17 report. I know that the House is really focusing on that first, and then
Yep.
we'll do it in the second half of the session. So we'll look forward to having you in to go over that more in depth with us.
Great.
But really great to hear that you're supportive and appreciate it's always nice to hear somebody say, I see what you're doing here, and it's consistent with what you've done before. So
Yep.
that's nice. So thank you for that.
Yep,
Do
great.
you have a question, Senator? No? Okay, awesome.
Great.
It looks like we're good. We just wanted to get your input. So thank you very much and have a great weekend.
You too. Everyone drive home safely. Thank you.
Bye. Good to see you.
You too.
All
Bye.
right, everyone. We can go off live. I think